Alright, afternoon everybody. Straight off the bat, this feels super weird filming myself. I don't want to do it over and over, so bear with me if I'm a little bit all over the show. Right, so today's marine protected areas. Please make sure you have something to write on, a piece of paper, because I still have your books, as well as your marine protected area notes. Alright, I'm going to be referring to the notes and reading from the notes at some point. I'm also going to be writing notes on the board. Whatever I write on the board, please take down in your books as well. Feel free to pause the video. If you have any questions, please contact me. You may WhatsApp me, email me, anything like that. When we come back on Monday, then we're not going to talk about this much. I'm just going to be like, how do you find it? Is it all good? But Monday's focus is mainly going to be the ecotourism section. All right, and remember ecotourism, that worksheet is for Monday. Right, and we'll finish it on Monday. Cool. All right, so starting off on page 2 of the notes, you'll see there under the introduction, this paragraph over there kind of deals with why do we even need marine protected areas. Okay, so why do we need them? So I've highlighted a couple of things over here on my notes. I'm just going to draw your attention to that. So some of the reasons why we need marine protected areas is industrialized harvesting. All right, so that was what we spoke about with overfishing. So more and more equipment, technology, just fishing and harvesting of ocean resources, even if that's mining as well, so harvesting minerals, it is very industrialized and therefore damaging on the marine environment. All right. Intensified human activities such as overfishing, mining, oil spills, and human-induced waste. All right, so those are just some examples of why we need marine protected areas. Right, so your notes are very largely based off the Living Shores book. Those of you who were here last year, you would have seen that book. It's that really big book with the nautilus shell on it. So I've got this chapter from that book with me, and I'm just going to be referring to that as well. Right, so marine protected areas are areas of the ocean, right, number one, it's an area, which aims to conserve not only the environment, but also the social and cultural aspects of the area. So World Heritage Sites, indigenous populations, anything like that, as well as economic things. Right, so marine protected areas, environment, social, people, and businesses. Right, so fishing. We want to conserve the fishing so that for future generations can also make money and obviously eat fish. Right. So another reason why South Africa needs a lot of marine protected areas is because we have a high rate of endemism, endemic species, endemism, right? So those are species that are found nowhere else in the world but here, right? Those of you who are used to marine sciences in South Africa already, we have our warm Agulhas current that comes up and our cold Benguela current. Cold ocean, warm ocean come together, perfect breeding ground for high endemic species. All right, not found anywhere else because of the unique temperatures that exist over there. Right, so this is what we call a biological hotspot. Okay, so a biological hotspot is an area, again, where there's a high rate of diversity, variety of living things, but it is specifically a hotspot not just because it has lots of cool, pretty things and diversity, but also because it is threatened. There's some sort of threat that is there. So when we talk about biological hotspots, your brain must go, these are areas in South Africa we are protecting because they are so diverse. Right. One of the examples of this area is Tsitsikamma Marine Protected Area. That is the second oldest marine protected area in the whole world, and the oldest marine protected area in South Africa. It was made in 1964, and it's found along the south coast, there by Knysna. All right, so here's just some pictures of Tsitsikamma. So research into Tsutsukama Marine Protected Area, because it's so old, we've got a lot of years of research on it, and research there has proved that marine protected areas does work. All right, so species have made a comeback there, fishing has also made a comeback there, and all sorts of things like that. So obviously, like we spoke about on the previous lesson, there can be conflicts. Not everybody agrees which areas should be marine protected areas and which should not. And so we will talk about that later on how to navigate those. All right, so another thing just to add is marine protected areas are the equivalent of our terrestrial nature reserve. So the Kruger National Park, that would be the biggest nature reserve that we have here. Marine protected areas are the same and they should get the same treatment as well. Right, however, oceans are way more complicated than the land, so there are no boundaries in the ocean, right? There's no walls or fences like we do have on land. There's no soil, and ownership is different. So on land, people own a stick of land, it's yours. You have the right to do what you want with it to a degree, but in the ocean, you don't have people that own pieces of ocean. And so establishing marine protected areas can be quite difficult and a process that involves lots of people. All right. Another thing you need to know is that marine protected areas go by many names. So we speak about MPAs a lot. However, you might also hear the words parks, marine reserves, and marine sanctuaries. All right. Parks, reserves, sanctuaries. You need to know those three names. Cool. What they all have in common, though, at the end of the day, is that they restrict human activities. So some marine protected areas, you are still allowed to have some sort of human activities, whilst others none whatsoever. But all parks, sanctuaries, and reserves have some sort of limitation on what. All right, so for marine protected area to be very effective, you have to have the center of your marine protected area must be a no-take zone, right? So no removing of resources. In your notes, I think it talks about extractive, so basically taking out. Don't remove resources from the center of the MPA, right? Then around the no-take zone, then that's when things can start to change. So some marine protected areas might have a recreational area around, all right, so not commercial, not fishing for selling and things like that, but recreational, so fishing for fun, for holiday goers and all those type of things. All right. What we also have in terms of what I'm talking about here is a couple of important terminology that you guys previously summarized. So this would be called a biosphere reserve, right? Biosphere, the word biosphere, bio, life, sphere, circle, right? Life circle. A biosphere is everything. It includes the water, the soil, the air, and all the life, plants and animals that live in it. And so a biosphere reserve is terrestrial, marine, and coastal, right? And it protects all three of those, your terrestrial, your marine, and your coastal areas. And it has a core of a no-take zone, and then around the core is a buffer zone. All right, also known as a periphery. Periphery means on the outside. So buffer zones or transitional zones, these are areas where you minimize environmental damage, but you are still allowed to take some things out. Okay, so biosphere reserve, no-take zone in the core, buffer and transitional zones, some recreational or other activities may happen. An example of a biosphere reserve is the one that we're going to for our camp. So Betty's Bay is part of a biosphere reserve, and so we'll look more at that later. Right, so looking at marine protected areas in South Africa, I've given you 3 logos over there. So that is of SANBI. They are the South African National Biodiversity Institute. I've also given you the logo for Department of Environmental Affairs, which is the government, South African government that works with the ocean and the fisheries and the forestry, and also Operation Phakisa. So Operation Phakisa is also a governmental operation aimed at focusing and highlighting South Africa's oceans for not just its environment and all the nice fish and the plants, but for the cultural, social, and economic aspects of the area as well. All right, so it says over here from this textbook here, the process of Operation Pakisa has been involving extensive consultation with stakeholders. Sorry, I'm going to say it again. The process has been involving extensive consultation with stakeholders and has been driven by the goal of protecting vulnerable ecosystems while minimizing conflict. Okay, so we want to protect our ecosystems and we don't want to fight between each other. The fishermen, the conservationists, the government, the scientists, etc. So currently, I actually don't know how many marine protected areas we have in South Africa. I think it's in your notes. You guys can have a look. But only 0.4% of South Africa's economic zone, so that area, I'll show you a map now, economic zone, only 0.4% of that is currently protected in marine protected areas, and only 0.16% falls in a completely no-take zone. So we are working extensively to increase the number of marine protected areas in South Africa. I've spoken to you guys previously about one of my friends who, that's her job. She works with Kerry Sink, who's the main head of doing all of this marine protected area stuff. And she has actually given me some posters. Right, so these are posters that are in the classroom. You guys can come and look at them on Monday. But these posters are not available to the public anywhere yet, and these are the maps that they are using to try and decide where our next or our new marine protected areas should be. Okay, so now we're going to look at functions of marine protected areas. So what is the purpose of them? So I've outlined 6 functions specifically. They are in your notes. If you look on page 5 and page 6 and even page 7. All right, so you have a very long list of key benefits of marine protected areas, so those are functions as well. You don't have to memorize all of them. All right, I'm giving you 6. So for your tests and exams, it's a good idea to remember that when you have a long list of things, no matter what subject, it's usually a good idea to learn at least 4 to 6 of those points. All right, so let's go. See that? Yeah. All right, so the first function of marine protected area is obvious. It is the conservation of the marine biodiversity, especially for species that are rare, threatened, or endemic species. Right, I'm not going to write down the whole thing, but you do have it in your notes that it is the conservation of biodiversity. Okay. Maybe it's a good idea to add there specifically for rare or threatened species. Right, number 2 is to number 2 is to maintain and restore ecosystems. So you want to keep them as close to pristine or perfect as possible. All right, so to maintain, to keep it perfect, or if it isn't perfect already, pristine, to restore it, to make it back to that pristine condition. Right? Number 3 is to ensure that they continue to supply ecosystem services. Right? Now, when you think of a marine protected area supplying us with services, we're not talking about going on a boat trip, fishing, anything that we think of as a service for humans, it's ecosystem services. So what services does the ecosystem give to the animals and plants living inside of the ecosystem? Okay, so I've given you an example of an ecosystem service, which would be the habitat. So can it stay as a good habitat for spawning, for fish and things to reproduce and give birth? All right, so that would be number 3. Then number 4 is to support fisheries. Support fisheries, number 5. Okay, so number 4 is to support the fisheries, make sure there's enough fish for fisheries, and tourism. Marine protected areas bring a lot of money in for the country with tourism if it looks pristine and beautiful and all those things. And the last one is also cultural and spiritual. Okay, so a lot of, especially in our country, we have a lot of indigenous populations who rely on the sea in the past. You can think of even baptisms, okay? If you want to do a baptism in the ocean, which a lot of people do, you don't want to do that in a place where you might get ill, all right, or contract E. coli, and now you're vomiting after you've done a religious experience, holy experience. So that's not nice. So that is also included. And then obviously, when in doubt, number 7, you can always add education. All right, so if you have a marine protected area, you can use that area to educate people on what the environment should look like, all right, when it hasn't been damaged. Right, just one more thing I wanted to add. When it comes to supporting fisheries, a word that we're going to use there we use the word spill over. So if you have a core no-take zone, no one's allowed to fish in there. So those fish inside will breed, they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually those fish aren't going to fit in that core no-take zone, and so they will spill over into the buffer and transition zones and outwards to where the fishermen are waiting to catch them. All right, so that's how marine protected areas work for that regard. Right, next up, there are 4 new definitions that I want us just to note. I'm not going to write down the full definition out here. I'm just going to write the 4 words. You have the definitions in your books. All right, so let's go. Okay, so there's our 4 definitions. So ecological integrity. Integrity means that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. All right, so when it comes to the environment, we basically want MPAs to make sure that the ecosystem has the ability to support and maintain everything that relies on the ecosystem. Okay, so that ecosystem's role is to feed those fish, to give oxygen, all of those things. It says that it's going to do that. So we want to make sure that the ecosystem is able to do that, continue to support who lives there and maintain that. Right, then the next one, we already spoke about ecosystem services, all right? So those are services for the ecosystem, like is there enough habitat, is the habitat safe, is there enough food, is there enough oxygen, those kind of things that the ecosystem needs to give for the animals and plants living there. Then we also have ecosystem resilience. So these are all things that marine protected areas do. So they're also part of functions, all right, of marine protected areas. So ecosystem resilience would be the strength of that ecosystem. Can that ecosystem cope with any human pressures that we put on it, all right? How strong is it? Can it hold up against the pressures that we give it up? Then ecosystem stability. The last one, how stable is that ecosystem? So stable would be like this, okay? Unstable. So stable, at this level, we would call it equilibrium. It's normal. If we had to have an oil spill in the ecosystem, not so good. We want marine protected areas so that that ecosystem is able to bounce back and to restore itself to normal. All right, so ecosystem stability, how quickly, what's its ability to return to normal. All right. Then we have a little note over here at the bottom saying that marine protected areas work best in areas where the fish have completely been depleted. All right, so exploited fish stocks. If they are almost extinct, that's where you want your marine protected area, obviously, to grow up the stock again. They also work best if you use intermediate mobility. So what that means is the fish mustn't be able to move too much and have large migration patterns, because then they're just going to swim straight through the marine protected area and it's not really going to be of benefit to it. We also don't want animals who just stay in one place the whole time, because then they're just going to get more and more and more and more and more, but they're not going to go anywhere, right? They're not going to spill over and help the fishermen and all those things. So we want fish with intermediate, medium mobility, movement. So they'll stay there, maybe they'll leave, spill over, and those type of things. All right, so now we've come to the main chunk of this lesson, actually, which is how do we choose? How do we go about choosing marine protected areas? So, fun fact, South Africa has 150 ecosystems, right? That's a lot of ecosystems. So now we don't want to focus our marine protected areas on just one or two ecosystems. We want to have marine protected areas that cover a range of all of our ecosystems, all right? So in each marine protected area, we have what is called a representative sample. It's in the back of your notes, in your glossary, representative sample. So that means that in your marine protected area, there must be a piece, a sample of the whole ecosystem must be in there. So you've got a little bit of this fish, a little bit of these plants. It's not just one species that you're focusing on, but it does kind of cover the whole ecosystem, right? Examples of ecosystems, kelp forests, coral reefs. Some people say, oh, well, we need to put marine protected areas where they have the most species. Well, that would probably be coral reefs. But we can't go and protect only all of our coral reefs, because then what about the sandy shore? As you guys saw from last year, all the animals in the sandy shore are underneath the sand. So it looks like there's no animals in there to protect, but it's definitely needed, especially when we have so much people moving to the coast and wanting to build and develop and remove sand dunes and all these type of things. And so we need to have marine protected areas in each biogeographic region. Right, that is a word from last year, right, from South African ecosystems. So have a look here on the slides of what your biogeographic region is. All right, so your biogeographical regions would be, you've got your Namakwa, BGZ, so biogeographical region, that's what BGZ stands for. Your Southwestern Cape one, your Agulhas, your Natal, and your Delagoa, all right, they're up on the east coast. So these are all different regions which share similar characteristics, right? So that might be that they share the same water temperature, they may share similar species, and all those type of things. And that is why we group them the way that we group. Here you can see that the biogeographic regions that we have actually correlate pretty well with the temperature of South Africa's coastline. So you would have seen that your Delagoa BGZ, on the far east coast, that's over there where St. Lucia is. All right, you go all the way over to the cool temperate side, that is where your Namakwa BGZ is. All right, and those little lines that are going down there show you where our main temperature differences are. So we would ideally want to have marine protected areas in each of these zones. Okay, so this shows you South Africa's exclusive economic zone. So this area is the area that belongs to South Africa. You'll see outside of the EEZ is your international waters. So that's where other countries and things can put their boats through. You will notice that, or hopefully you'll notice that the lines that separate South Africa's different economic zones also falls in line with our biogeographic zones, which talks about similar life and similar geography in terms of, water temperature, all of those things. But also it aligns with our temperatures. Okay, so now I'd like you to turn to page 9 of your notes. So page 9 shows you the establishment process. So what are the steps you need to take to establish or put in place a marine protected area? All right, so I'm going to highlight certain words and write them on the board. This is not an extensive summary of what you have in front of you. So please do add to your summary and your notes. All right, so there you go. So the main thing that we need to know, what it says there, point number 4, is if marine protected areas are only managed by the government, then nothing's going to happen, all right? It becomes ineffective, so you need everybody, all stakeholders. All right, we spoke about this in the last lesson. So step number 1, you want to identify who all are your stakeholders going to be, who's your marine scientist, who's your conservationist, who's your fishery expert, who's your government expert, your indigenous person, like who are your stakeholders, right? Everyone must be informed about the state of the plants and the animals. So everybody, not just the biology person, everybody needs to know what is the state of your plants and animals, threatened, extinct, going on extinct, what is the state of it? And number 3, everyone needs to understand how humans impact those marine organisms or the area. Okay, clear understanding of what is busy going on, etc., etc. Right, then number 4, you need to have very clear goals and objectives, and the benefits of a marine protected area need to be explained in detail and clearly to everybody involved. All right, then once you have your goals and objectives and you establish your MPA, you need to have continuous monitoring. All right, so scientists, researchers, whoever, need to keep going back to the marine protected area, make sure that it's working, do studies on it, and if anything is not working, you need to, number 6, make changes. All right, those changes need to align with your goals and objectives to keep on your objective the whole time. There's no point in establishing a marine protected area and not checking if it doesn't work or not. Okay. All right, then I'd like you to turn to page 10 of your notes. So page 10, you'll see that it says Pressey's checklist. So Pressey is an Australian geographer and ecology spatial planner, all right? And he has developed an 8-step checklist for recommending marine protected areas. You need to know these 8 steps. All right, one time. That's what it says at the beginning of your notes, all right? So please highlight this. Step number 1, we've kind of already spoken about this, but identify your stakeholders. Step 2, set out broad goals. Step 3, collect evidence, collect data, information about your marine protected area so that you know if your goals are realistic or not. Step number 4, your goals of your conservation goals. So if you say, we want to bring back the snook, right? Say now snook is becoming extinct, we want to bring back snook. That's not going to help when you actually go and collect the data, all right? So then you need to change, so step number 4 is changing your goal into a quantitative goal. Quantitative means a number goal. How many snook do you want to see? Do you want to see an increase of 10%? Do you want to see an increase of 50%? Do you want 5,000 snook? What is your actual number that you can target? All right, so we can know if this is working or not. Step number 5, the contribution of existing reserves to meeting the targets is determined. Right, so you have a look at all your other marine protected areas that you do have. Will those marine protected areas help in achieving this target that you have? Because then obviously your new marine protected area might not have to be as big and all of those things. Step 6, algorithms are used to select additional targets or additional areas. Right, so algorithms is basically a computer system, right? So we use special computer programs. You put all your numbers and your information in it, and then the computer will give you ideas on whether you should increase the area to achieve your target or if you don't need to, and it's all good. Right, we'll talk about that algorithm thing now, so put a pin in that. Step 7, then you actually go and implement your conservation. Right, you establish a marine protected area, you have boats out monitoring if fishermen are going into the area, whatever you need to do to implement that. That could also include education, right? Educating people in the area that live there, all sorts of things like that. Right, then step number 8, last step, then you need to have your constant monitoring, all right? So that's what we spoke about. And it says there in your book, adaptive management. So when you are constantly monitoring this marine protected area and its success, are you adapting the way you are managing it so that your target is still reached? Okay, so those are your 8 steps. Please do go and have a look at that. The key thing that you need to know about establishing or making a marine protected area is that it is complicated. So yeah, we've spoken about why, in terms of all the stakeholders not being able to own a piece of the ocean, and all those type of things. Right, so why do we use quantitative data? Well, we need something that we can defend. All right, I'm on page 11, by the way. You need something as a scientist. If you're going to go stand up in front of the president or whoever is involved, right, and you say, we need to put a marine protected area here, oh, because I want to, because, oh, the fish I like lives here. No, okay? You need to have actual numbers and information and evidence that look how this population has declined, and all those type of things. Okay, so on page 11, it talks about Marxian analysis. Marxian. Right. So Marxian analysis, the definition is at the back of your books. It is basically a computer system. You can use the word algorithm if you want to. It's a computer tool which helps decision makers figure out where the marine protected area should go. And it does this by maximizing the amount of conservation that's happening, so maximizing protection, whilst minimizing how expensive it's going to be to put that marine protected area in place. So for example, will that marine protected area cause a mining company to close down? Because that's going to cost the government a lot to close that down. All right, so Marxian analysis, algorithm, useful tool, help to make decisions, minimize cost, maximize protection. All right, and then if you have all of these information and stuff, then you can defend your argument. You can say, this is why we need a marine protected area, and no one can tell you otherwise. All right, we're almost there. Almost there. All right, I am on page 11, objectives and criteria. Okay, so for marine protected areas, when you're making one, an objective is something you want to achieve. All right, so we want, you'll see there on the bottom of page 11, it says protection, fisheries management, and utilization. Okay, so these are our three main objectives. So obviously we want to protect. You'll see there that they give you specific things on what you need to protect. So you need to protect your habitat, you need to protect your actual species and those type of things, right? Then we obviously want the fisheries to have fish and all those things. So you'll see in your notes there are two bolder definitions there. So we want to increase our adjacent yield. Adjacent means next to. Yield means, what does yield mean? It's like your product, right? How much you make. So basically your adjacent yield in terms of marine protected areas is we want to increase the amount of fish we can catch adjacent next to the marine protected area. Okay, so that's spillover we were talking about. And hopefully this will increase our spawner biomass as well. So spawner, how many baby fish, right? How many juvenile fish can come from the larger fish? All right, that sounds like a very grade 9 definition I just gave you. So let's have a look here. Spawner biomass means total combined mass of fish that are old enough to reproduce. All right. That's all you need to know. The mass of the amount of fish that can reproduce. Right, lastly, our objective of utilization. Utilization means we still want to use the MPA. All right, we still want to use the ocean. So we don't want to just protect it and not use it. We don't want the fishermen to not make money. All right, so utilization can be things like education, recreation, for fun. It can be something like ecotourism, which you guys will look at later this week. And even research. All right, scientific research. Okay, then you'll see that at the bottom of page 12, you have a large list of criteria. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that, but what is in your notes here is, I'll show you guys this now on the next slide. There is a page like this in your notes. You can't read it, it's very blurry. No? Okay, I will give you this on Monday. But this table, it's called a matrix. A matrix just means a table of numbers. All right, and basically it is called compare. All right, it's on page 13. Compare. It stands for criteria and objectives for MPA evaluation. All right, so they use these three objectives with all of the criteria that's listed on page 12, and they put it in this thing here. All right, so You've got your objectives there. There's your top 3: protection, fisheries management, utilization. What are we protecting? There's the spawner biomass, adjacent yield, and utilization. All right, how we use the thing. Then all those criteria are listed here. All right, and this is something you can use to see if an area needs to be a marine protected area. This example that you're looking at is actually for Cape Point Nature Reserve, which is here in Cape Town. So what they've done is for each objective and for each criteria, they give it a score from, I think it's 1 to 2, 0 to 2. 0 is ineffective, all right, there's a 0. And 1 is moderately effective, and 2 is highly effective. Right, so the black stuff is the things that doesn't apply. So for example, yeah, no, it's fine. I don't feel like going into all that stuff. It's not relevant. Okay, what you all need to know though is these numbers on the side, they get added up to make a total over here, and then a percentage is worked out. Right, then all the way at the bottom, you will see there is a final percentage, overall percentage of taking all of this together of 69%. All right, so this means that there's a 69% chance that this marine protected area would be good and it should be established. So if a different area gets a higher percentage, then maybe you want to use that. If another area gets a lower percentage, maybe you'd rather use Cape Point, and so etc, etc. Okay, so you guys can find all that information on page 13 and 14. All right, just quick sticks. The reason why we use this compare analysis is so that we can get international objectives, right? So we want to compare South Africa's marine protected areas to an international standard. And if international standards are using this checklist or similar criteria, we as South Africans would like to put ourselves on the same level. Right. Another reason why we use that criteria and that checklist is because it includes fisheries and utilization. So we're not just looking at conservation. We're not just looking at plants and animals. We are looking at social, economic, and economic aspects of marine protection. Okay, last but not least, page 15. Okay, so page 15 talks about IUCN categories of marine protected areas. You have 6 different categories. Now, grade 12s, you need to know these 6 categories, and you need to know what these 6 categories are. I saw in the past paper, I think it was last year's paper or the year before, they gave you a little text about a marine protected area in Prince Edward's Islands. And then the question was, what category of marine protected area is this? And now you need to know, is it category 1, 2, 3, what is it? Okay, so please star this, highlight this. We're going to go through this, and then this is our last thing for the day. Cool. So the first one you have is a category 1. So think of number 1 as like the most intense. All right, so it's a strict nature reserve or wilderness area, mainly used for science. Okay, so if you are not having any fishing, if you're not having any people there with their boats and recreation, all those things, it is a category 1 marine protected area. Okay, just strictly for marine sciences research. It includes representative samples from that biogeographic region. All right. And it also includes a specific species that we are protecting. Okay, so then again, that links in with science. They're looking at a specific species. Okay, number two is less intense. Number 2 is a national park. So they protect the ecosystem, but now, keyword park, now you're allowed to do things for fun as well, so recreation. Okay, so it says here, protection of ecosystems and the provision of recreational activities for visitors. The aim is to protect the ecological integrity. So we still want people to use the area, but we want to make sure that the ecosystem is still able to support those that are relying on it. All right, and a good thing an example here that they give you is ecotourism. Ecotourism is a perfect example because it focuses on threatened species in a natural environment, and it supports conservation, and it allows people to come in there recreationally because it's tourism. All right, cool. Number three category is intended to protect a natural feature. So number 3 is specific. We are looking at a specific thing that we want to protect, right? For example, if South Africa had one volcano and only one volcano, that specific thing would be protected. All right, so it says here that it contains one or more natural or cultural features that are unique to the area. All right, so cultural things could also be indigenous relations to the ocean. Okay, number 4, category 4, habitat or species management. Okay, so this is basically just where you have an area and you have people that go into the area and they just make sure that everything is okay. So they intervene if something needs to happen, but it's just basically constant monitoring of that area, of a specific habitat, so kelp forest or rocky shore, or a specific species. So checking up on the habitat or checking up on the species. Okay, number 5 is for not specifically the habitat or the species, but now we're going bigger. So number 5 is landscape. All right, so you'll see how this gets less and less intense as we keep going. So it's a specific area of the land or the sea that is also for, like with number 2, for conservation and for recreation. Okay, yeah. And the last one, number 6, category 6, is called a managed resource protected area. So this is an area where we are protecting it, however we are harvesting, we are using from that area. It's not a no-take zone. So it says at the same time, sustainable harvesting of natural resources and services is permitted. All right, so in order to meet our needs of our community and to eat food and have, I don't know, kelp and all these things, we still need to use the ocean, and that would be a managed resource protected area. Okay, so 1 through to 6. All right, so to end off this lesson, here's your 6 ICUN marine protected area categories. So I've just summarized in quick sticks. Number 1, very strict. It's for research or specific species, nothing else. No recreation, no commercial, nothing. Number 2, national park, for protection, but now we have recreation. No commercial fishing, but recreation, and that includes ecotourism. Number 3, national monument. Now we are getting more specific. Okay, so it's a specific cultural or animal plant thing that we want to protect. Number 4, it's in the name. We are managing a specific habitat or species. So you go back to that area with specific intent to look for that species or to look after that habitat. Number 5, same thing, but here we are looking at the whole seascape, all right, the whole area, not just a very specific habitat. Remember, habitat can be something as simple as a rock, okay, whereas the seascape would be that beach, for example, or maybe even that coastline or something like that. Right, then the last one, managed resource, is in the name there, resources. We use it, we do harvest from it, but we do so in a sustainable way so that we are harvesting so that future generations may also have resources. All right, grade 12s, to end off this lesson, I'm sorry if this was long or anything like that. I hope this works. If this doesn't work, let me know what didn't work so we can make it better next time. What you liked, what you didn't like, please be honest. It's the first time we're doing something like this. And so any criticism is welcome, even if it's negative. Right, please. You're not going to make things better if you don't tell me what's wrong. Okay. If you want to practice this section for yourself, you may go onto page 21 to your test your knowledge section. You are welcome to try out number 3, explain the need for standardizing the criteria of a marine protected area. So why is the criteria for making a marine protected area the same everywhere in the world? Number 4, describe the justification of marine protected areas in South Africa. So why do we need marine protected areas in South Africa? and the recommendations made by scientists as to how extensive marine protected areas should be in South Africa. Number 5, you can list key benefits of marine protected areas. I think I gave you 6, right? Number 6, describe the process recommended by scientists to develop, declare, and demarcate a marine protected area. Number 7, describe PRESI's 8-step checklist for developing an MPA. And number 8, describe the approach used by scientists to develop objectives and criteria for developing an MPA. So that would be the compare tool. Describe the ICUN's 6 categories of MPA. Right, and then you've basically done number 11 already. Okay, so from 3 to 9. Okay, that is six questions. You may do that on your own time. I will mark it if you want me to mark it. Make sure you understood all of those things. If you are ever unsure of what you need to do, come back to the front and check that off. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Remember that your ecotourism stuff is only due on Monday. All right. Have a good day.